Imagine living in a quiet neighborhood where you put up a gate at the entrance of your own driveway just to keep things private and safe. One day, you get a letter from the HOA. It's not a friendly note, it's an order. They tell you that your gate must stay unlocked at all times. Their reason? Neighbors and HOA members claim they should have free access. Now think about that for a second. Your property, your gate, your money spent to build it, yet someone else demanding control. That's where this story takes a sharp turn. At first, it feels unfair, even ridiculous. Why should anyone dictate whether you lock or unlock your own gate? But as the arguments heat up, a bold idea sparks. If the HOA wants access so badly, then maybe it's time to look at who really owns the road they all depend on. That's when the discovery happens. The road leading through the neighborhood is not public. It can be privately bought. And once that piece of information comes to light, the entire balance of power begins to shift. What started as a simple demand over a gate grows into a battle for total control. To understand why this fight even started, you need to know what an HOA actually is. A homeowners association is supposed to keep a community organized. They maintain shared spaces, set certain rules, and make sure everyone follows them. On paper, it sounds simple. Keep lawns neat, manage streetlights, handle repairs, but in reality, HOAs often push far beyond those duties. They can send notices, fine homeowners, and even place liens if rules aren't followed. That's where the tension usually begins. In this case, the HOA looked at the locked gate as a violation of their authority. They argued it limited access, and because they were in charge, they thought their rules should override private decisions. But here's what most people don't realize. An HOA's power only stretches as far as the community documents allow. They can't just decide what happens on land they don't own or control. And that is the detail that changes everything. When the homeowner started digging deeper into property rights, the HOA's demand didn't look so strong anymore. Instead, it exposed just how much they relied on assumptions and pressure, rather than actual legal authority. And that discovery was about to turn the entire situation upside down. The whole conflict really comes down to one big question: who owns the road? At first glance, it looks like just another neighborhood street. Neighbors drive on it every day. The HOA acts like they control it, and most people assume it's public. But that's not always the case. Some roads inside communities are private, which means they're either owned by the HOA or by individual property owners. And with private roads come big responsibilities: maintenance, repairs, even snow removal. More importantly, the owner decides who gets access. This is where easements come in. An easement is basically permission written into property documents that allows others to use a road or piece of land. Without one, the HOA can't force anyone to leave gates open. It's a legal boundary, and if it doesn't exist, then the HOA's demand is nothing more than pressure. Once the homeowner in this story realized this, everything clicked. The road wasn't guaranteed public access at all. In fact, it could actually be purchased outright. And if that happened, the HOA wouldn't just lose their argument about the gate, they would lose the very path they used every single day to get in and out of the neighborhood. The fight over the gate started small, but quickly turned personal. The homeowner had built it for privacy and safety, nothing more. But when the HOA demanded it stay unlocked, things spiraled. Letters arrived, phone calls followed, and meetings turned heated. Neighbors complained about being inconvenienced, even though the gate was never meant for them in the first place. The HOA acted as if their authority stretched over every square inch. But the homeowner wasn't buying it. Instead of arguing in circles, they decided to dig deeper. That's when the real twist appeared. By looking into the property records, the homeowner discovered something the HOA had conveniently ignored. The road itself wasn't truly theirs. It was private, and its ownership could be transferred. That meant with the right move, the entire community's access could be controlled. Imagine the shock. The very path every neighbor used daily could suddenly belong to the one person the HOA was trying to push around. The gate was no longer just a gate. It became a symbol of who actually held the power. And once the idea of buying the road took hold, the homeowner realized this wasn't just about defending property anymore. It was about rewriting the rules entirely. Buying a road isn't something most people even think about, but it's more possible than you'd expect. The homeowner started by pulling public records and checking the deeds. Every parcel of land has an owner. And roads are no different. Sometimes it's the city, sometimes the HOA, and sometimes it's left in the hands of a developer who never passed it on. In this case, the road wasn't public. It was privately held and up for sale. That opened a door the HOA never thought the homeowner would step through. Next came the legal steps. Title searches confirmed the details, lawyers drew up the paperwork, and negotiations began. While the HOA was busy sending demand letters about the gate, the homeowner was quietly arranging to buy the very ground they walked and drove on. Owning a road comes with costs: repairs, upkeep, insurance, but it also brings one powerful advantage: control. No HOA rule could override the rights of a legal owner. And once the deal was signed, the balance of power flipped completely. The road no longer belonged to a board of neighbors. It belonged to the person they had been trying to intimidate. When the papers were finally signed, the homeowner held the deed to the road in their hands. It wasn't just property, it was leverage. The HOA could no longer demand access, because every car, every delivery, and every visitor had to travel over land that was no longer theirs to control. The gate that once caused endless arguments was now backed by ownership. Instead of removing it, the homeowner reinforced it, locked it tight, and made it clear that entry was no longer a right, but a privilege. The reaction was instant. Neighbors who once complained about the inconvenience of the gate suddenly realized the road itself was no longer guaranteed to them. The HOA scrambled, threatening more letters, even hinting at lawsuits. But what could they really do? Ownership speaks louder than demands. The same people who once tried to dictate the rules were now forced to ask permission just to use the path they'd always taken for granted. The gate stood as more than a barrier. It became a reminder of who truly had the upper hand. And for the homeowner, it was a moment of satisfaction, knowing the battle that began with one small demand had ended with absolute control. Owning the road changed everything, but it also came with lessons that every homeowner should know. The first is simple: never assume the HOA has unlimited power. Their authority comes only from what's written in the governing documents. And those documents don't erase private property rights. If something feels off, always check the deed, the title history, and the exact wording of any easement. That one step can reveal far more than you'd expect. The second lesson is that property ownership gives you options. Most people think roads, alleys, or even certain pathways belong to the city, but many times they don't. They can be privately owned, and with ownership comes control. That means you can decide who enters, who doesn't, and under what conditions. Of course, it also means responsibility. Maintenance, liability, and costs fall on the owner too. But in the right situation, the benefits outweigh the burden. Finally, don't overlook professional advice. Lawyers who focus on property law can break down what rights you truly have, long before an HOA tries to intimidate you. In this story, one bold step flipped the entire power structure, and it all started with refusing to unlock a single gate. What began as a simple demand about a locked gate ended up reshaping the entire neighborhood dynamic. The HOA wanted control, but instead, they lost it in the most dramatic way possible. With the road now privately owned, every trip in or out of the community passed over land the homeowner controlled. The same board members who once issued orders were suddenly faced with a choice: respect the new reality or risk being shut out altogether. For the first time, the balance of power tilted completely away from them. The homeowner didn't just win an argument, they rewrote the rules of how the neighborhood operated. What looked like defiance on the surface was actually strategy backed by law, property rights, and determination. And the beauty of it all was that the HOA had no idea what was coming. They thought they were dealing with someone they could pressure into compliance. Instead, they found themselves dependent on the very person they had tried to corner. The locked gate was more than a barrier. It was proof that sometimes the strongest move is not fighting back directly, but changing the game entirely. And once that happened, there was no turning things back to the way they were.